Another day, another new threat from the U.S. president, this time about a new bridge that connects Ontario and the state of Michigan, a key trade corridor. Now, it hasn't opened yet, but Donald Trump says it might not if he has it his way. Let's go to Pascal Chan, Vice President of Strategic Policy and Supply Chains for the Chamber of Commerce. He joins us now. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Marilla.
How seriously do you take the latest threat from the American president?
Well, as you said, we have to take the threats seriously. It is another threat from this U.S. administration, and it's tough to know at this point whether it's something that's going to materialize or just remain words on Truth Social. What we do know is it's something that's going to fuel the uncertainty for businesses that we've seen more or less throughout his tenure in 2025. And either way, it is pretty clear that blocking or barricading bridges is just something that would be self-defeating and simply cause damage to both economies.
Okay, so we know he doesn't care sometimes about self-defeating, at least in the near term. Tell me a little bit about the bridge and how much traffic it is expected to have.
Yeah, so first of all, I mean, when you're talking about Windsor and Detroit, there are approximately 2.5 million trucks across the Ambassador Bridge annually. And estimates put the volume of goods at up to 25% of the value of all U.S.-Canada roadway trade. Now, this new Gordie Howe International Bridge is expected to handle 400 commercial vehicles per hour. And I think it would go back to 2022, where we saw a blockade on that bridge and estimates reaching that this could have had an economic impact over 6 days that reached 3 to 6 billion, depending on what you're looking at. So, we've talked at length about the need to speed up approvals and deliver infrastructure projects more quickly. This new bridge is something that would help relieve some congestion, enhance fluidity, and simplify some of that trade.
Can you also just expand on what it would mean for the local economies on both sides? And I want to remind people that there are Americans come to Canada to work, Canadians who go to the U.S. to work, and they cross daily.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, last year, our Business Data Lab conducted an economic analysis of Canadian cities' reliance on trade with the U.S., which allowed us to examine more granular data at the municipal level. And everybody knows that Windsor's economy is very dependent on auto production, given it's home to major assembly plants. So production processes involve plenty of two-way trade with Michigan, which is just across the Ambassador Bridge and soon the Gordie Howe. So for Windsor, trade with the United States accounts for more than 60% of its GDP. Our Business Data Lab also looked across the border, and it's no surprise, I'm sure, to your viewers that Detroit ranked second among American cities most dependent on exports to Canada. Detroit is still the heart of America's automotive industry. It's home to the big three automakers, alongside nearly 100 auto parts suppliers. So Detroit's auto industry is deeply integrated with Canada, specifically Ontario, and together they form one of the most interconnected global automotive supply chains, producing about 22% of North America's vehicles.
Okay. If there was a disruption to the opening, if it was delayed because Donald Trump had decided he didn't want to see it open, what would the fallout be? Obviously, autos, you mentioned, would be a key supply chain that would be disrupted. What else?
I think you look at any commodity that's going to cross the border by truck specifically. I think we think of produce and a lot of other, retail goods that are going to cross that. And this is something that's going to be critically important, I think, to general trade as we're looking to expand that. I mean, it's also a little bit concerning, given that in 2017, the U.S. president had designated the bridge a priority project in a joint statement, describing it as, and I quote, a vital economic link between our two countries. So obviously we agree, and modern border infrastructure is something that strengthens our shared economic security. And again, a lot of those commodities that are going to be crossing would be impacted, as well as the volume of trade that we were hoping to grow in a time that we're looking to grow both of our economies.
Do you see this as a shot at CUSMA or USMCA, perhaps something that could be put on the table as a disruptor for those negotiations?
I think we've seen the American president raise a number of irritants, whether that's border security or the digital services tax, over the course of this, as we've gotten closer and closer to the review of CUSMA in 2026, and so that's coming up. But look, Canada and the United States have been working closely together for decades. They're our largest trading partner and our closest ally. And what we do best together is build, create jobs, and these things will strengthen our collective competitiveness in the global economy. So with $3.6 billion in cross-border trade every day, there are a number of things that we're seeing raised as irritants and problems, but this is something that we definitely need to work. It's a relationship that is worth keeping and working on and improving, even as we look to diversify our trade partnerships and expand our trade capacity elsewhere.
Okay, so let me ask you about authority for the bridge itself and other crossings between Canada and the U.S. How typically does it work?
Well, when it comes to authorities on this bridge specifically, I think we've heard the Prime Minister say earlier today that this is something that Canada has paid for, and they'll be looking at tolls to recover the cost of building the bridge. But the ownership is going to be shared between the state of Michigan and the government of Canada. And so when these things come into play, this is something that benefits both of those economies. How this is going to be enforced and what the U.S. president has in mind when he talks about stopping the opening of this bridge, we'll have to wait and see. But we know that there are parties on both sides and businesses on both sides that are looking forward to the economic benefit that this new piece of infrastructure is going to provide.
As you know, the Prime Minister says he's spoken today to the president, explained to him what the situation is. How do you feel about that conversation? Is it enough, you think, to lay to rest any concern?
I think that the uncertainty that we've seen is certainly going to persist as long as we're seeing more threats and as long as there is concern around other elements of what the future of our trading relationship is going to be. That said, continuing to have that dialogue open and continuing to speak to our partners and working towards what the next piece of that relationship is going to be on working on negotiations and looking forward to the review and ensuring that businesses on both sides of the border are speaking to each other and to decision makers is going to be important in getting towards an agreement that we think is going to be fair. So again, if we're talking about doing things that are going to dismantle the effectiveness of trade enabling infrastructure, that's a very costly proposition and something that's surely going to lead to both parties together collectively relinquishing our economic position in the world. So we hope that cooler heads prevail.
All right, Pascal Chan with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, thanks very much for joining us. Appreciate your time.